Hope you're all keeping great, folks. And today a very important, very short video just explaining one aspect of what's going on to destroy our world. And this is about the mass migration. So I think in around 5-6 minutes, I'll be able to explain pretty much comprehensively what's going on and why, and give you a lot of data as well to fully illustrate that. So this is one you don't want to miss.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
So let's do it. So we're focusing in on mass migration as one plank of many different strategies in the utopia that they would like. Global government, basically. And we look at the full root cause diagram. It doesn't include all the wars that they're perpetrating, but it does include major programs and strategies to mostly they all go towards weakening society. And a weakened society, destroying nationalism and sovereignty, really important play to achieve the utopia. So we're going to focus in here on mass migration. It erodes nationalism, erodes sovereignty, and weakens society, causes rifts, causes distrust, ghettoization, and generally damages national resilience. And it's a very important play, a really, really big strategy. Now I'm going to show a quick video clip first from Clayton in Redacted, and it's a really brief summary, 50 seconds, of Soros and Orban in Hungary, highlighting how he is part of the kind of scumbag cabal that's driving all of this from the top. So have a look at this.
Back in 2015, George Soros published his plan, which has now been implemented across the globe, to bring millions of illegals into the United States and into Europe. As Hungary's leader Viktor Orban recently pointed out,
I do remember how Mr. George Soros published his plan in a Project Syndicate publication. First, he said very clearly, 2015, EU has to accept at least 1 million asylum seekers annually. Second, he said adequate financing is critical, and he proposed to issue long-term euro bonds for financing the migration crisis and the migrants' social and welfare taking care when they arrive to the European Union. He said that, quoting them, safe channels must be established for asylum seekers, starting with getting them from Greece and Italy to their destination countries.
Viktor Orban, that's why they don't like him.
Indeed, that's why they don't like him. And of course, he's an anti-human scumbag, and everyone pretty much knows that. But it's not about asylum seekers, it's about economic migrants, preferably for a given country of a very different background and culture and religion, so as much disruption as possible will be caused, and that leads to weakening society, which is a very important strategy to achieve the global goals. So Restituter here summarized it very well, and basically, here's an excerpt from Soros. European plan must be accompanied by a global response under the authority of the United Nations, which is kind of a Rockefeller organ. So it's always the same people who are trying to get the global government and a kind of an ant farm, a kind of a social credit system, kind of ant farm totalitarian regime. And it's not a conspiracy theory, it's just the way it is. And they've documented everything. But here's 6 components of a comprehensive plan, and indeed it was. This is all documented. And they want 1 million asylum seekers, read economic migrants, annually for the foreseeable future. And the numbers they would like are actually much higher. So he's lowballing that to not come across as too crazy. And the burden must be shared, and all the summits occurred in New York, and it's all part of the same bunch of people up the top. They also want financing. So 15 grand per asylum seeker for each of the first 2 years. And we're seeing that in Ireland and all over the world. The money, the tax dollars are being poured into this because it's an important plan. The article is there. I'll put a link below if you want to go and read it from the evil man himself. And Wall Street Apes, I won't read through this, but you should follow that account for sure. And you can freeze screen and just read through this. But the key thing is it's written, it's published, it's known. And this is the really infuriating thing, that normies, if you like, think, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. It's all published, guys. Now, the fact that they have funded and largely owned the media through Davos and all the CEOs globetrotting over there all the time, you don't get to see this covered, but it's all fully published, and that's the key thing. And they're buying out the MPs and the politicians all across Europe and America to execute on this kind of demonic plan, because it's very insulting to the actual migrants themselves. They're being used as a weapon to destroy, ultimately, diversity in all the different countries and to make a big blob of disgruntled kind of people and weak societies. So it's actually revolting what they're doing, and they all talk about diversity, but meanwhile they publish that they want to destroy diversity. So what about Ireland? I'm going to give a bit of data here and keep moving quickly. So we have all these traditions and culture, and Sweden have theirs, and Germany have theirs, and all the country have their own rich traditions, diverse, so you can travel there and you can see these cultures and come back and talk about them. But that's if you maintain these cultures in some respect. If you destroy them all and make a bland blob, like Soros and Rockefeller and UN and EU want to do, you basically destroy diversity. And that's an important point to keep in mind. They seek to destroy all diversity and make a weak, bland blob of a society across the West in order to control it. And it's self-evident and it's in our faces. So I'll show you how much it's in our faces. So great article in Gript here from Niamh Breen in February. There's another one in March with an update. It's getting worse. And they just point out that the number of applicants is surging, even though a survey in Ireland recently found 75% plus of people, ordinary people all over Ireland, said one of the biggest issues the government needs to deal with is to slow down migration, economic illegal migration, because it's crazy. It's destroying the country over time. But also they note that Nigerian applicants are outpacing all other nationalities. So it really started going in 2022 with Ukraine, and we had to save Ukraine's granny. Now that's a tragic situation, but the government exploited the tragedy and they sent out tweets basically in around 8 or 9 languages, including many African ones. The first tweet they sent was in Ukrainian, saying there's all the money and houses you can handle, guys, just come on over, all comers welcome. But they also sent it out in the same day in a load of other languages. So completely laughing in our faces and scamming us. Just looking at the arrivals, 2022 in red, there was a big pile, and that was relating to Ukraine, but Ukraine figures are kept separate, right? This is non-Ukraine, is my understanding from the article. But a big surge anyway happened. 23, not so much, but still pretty huge towards the end of the year. And in 2024, after all of the people in Ireland are beginning to push back, and the survey shows that, and the unrest all over the country as they're force feeding and ramming kind of 10 cities into all areas of Ireland to house these impossibly large numbers, when we are already got a housing crisis and a homeless crisis. They don't care about Irish people. So as all that's happening and getting worse and the pushback is happening, they're actually increasing the tempo in the gold or yellow here. So it's absolutely nuts, and clearly we have politicians who report directly up to the bad boys, and they don't give an absolute fig about what their own constituents and people and citizens want. That's clear as crystal. They show nationality here, and the article highlights 31% were from Nigeria, 9% from Bangladesh. So you're quickly heading to 50% from regions that have nothing to do with war, nothing to do with asylum, nothing to do with Ukraine, nothing to do with anything. So again, it's self-evident. We are being scammed at a colossal scale. And here's the breakdown again by nationality. Large majority of those occupying accommodation while claiming, quote, asylum, are not, in fact, from war-torn countries. And there you have it. So, total scam, total globalist master plan stuff. Sounds conspiracy-like, but it's just the way it is. It's all published. And here is the housing data, and the authorities will not commit to a cap on the numbers arriving. Of course they won't, because they're being told from the top, these politicians, the way it's going to be, the way it has to be. So complete fraud. And you can see the graph there, like going through the roof. And again, I believe these do not include Ukrainian from the actual war. They've got their own separate class. So the article says the huge numbers of Ukrainians who continue to arrive in need of all the services, which are not really there, they're not included in these figures. And the Department of Justice, I think this was in March, were told or said the number of Ukrainians coming to Ireland had dropped, but has now surged again. Of course, why wouldn't you? Don't blame them, you know. Politicians are opening the door and throwing money at you and accommodation that they can barely find. Why wouldn't they? So nothing against them. This is key. Nothing against the people coming in. They see a great opportunity that's being shoved in their faces. It's not about them. It's about looking up and who is actually driving all of this nonsense. And just to give another quick look aside from that issue, EU wants to build a comprehensive database on the assets of all citizens. All assets. A mega database. And we've seen this before, even in the 1930s and 40s, and we saw the corporations putting together the punch cards and getting everything documented. And of course, it's towards or supportive of a form of great taking in the future, or dissidents, you'll be able to reach in and take their stuff. So Extremely sinister, of course. And one other little thing on the side, just to show you another part of the strategies, the anti-meat agenda and the anti-resilience and self-sufficiency agenda. All part of the plan. Here we have the avian bird flu nonsense. Do you ever notice how the avian flu, that's so scary, doesn't affect a lot of birds? In fact, it kind of mostly affects the chickens that we eat and we might rear ourselves. Do you ever notice that? The scam is in our faces. So here we have it now. They're trying to move in and register, control, and ultimately weed out people with their own supply of healthy food. All part of the plan. So finishing on the master kind of root cause diagram, you can freeze screen. I might put a link down below to download this, and you can stick it in your fridge, chat in the bar or the pub about it. But basically we have this massive program. It kind of illustrates here what it achieved. We have this other nonsense, right? You know, social contagion being used for the same outcome. We have, I don't want to get into this. If I mention the word now, I'll be demonetized. We have CBDC coming. We must stop that because things will get pretty grim if they get that in as a control tool. Education, of course, the schools and universities are Marxist hotbeds now, all funded and supported from the top for decades because it does this: weaken society, hit the young, take away their will to question or think critically. We covered this one today briefly, so you're fully informed on why and how this is going on. And I also mentioned briefly the anti-meat and the war on farmers, because that's another powerful strategy. So all of this stuff is published, it's self-evident, it's being rubbed in our faces. Our noses are being rubbed in this daily. And yet we've got to awaken the people who feel, because they've been trained to feel for decades, that anything about the rich and powerful messing up our future has to be a, quote, conspiracy theory. And that was a clever trick that they pulled, and admittedly it gives us some headwinds, but we will prevail, and it's all to play for against these anti-human scumbags. So that'll do it, folks. As always, huge thanks to people who support me and independent journalism and technical analysis outside of the utterly corrupted mainstream and legacy media. So people need to know what's going on, because clearly the only thing that's going to save us now in the coming years of this fourth turning, with so many bad people up the top driving the madness we're seeing, the only thing that will get us out of this is awareness. So we've got a huge proportion of people now that are asking questions, confused. They know something's rotten. The politicians are driving insane policies, but they're not sure why. So it's really important we have calm, rational discussions with data and references and published documents which explain why they're doing what they're doing. Unless people start to look upwards, right? Not at the people flooding the countries, poor migrants, not even at local politicians, though you can pressure them, politicians really, but look upwards at where it's actually coming from, the root cause. I've spent my whole life in root cause, and this is the most important root cause of all. It's a multi-generational, crucial period in history, and anyone who can continue to support me, or indeed jump on board, my Patreon does vlogs and lots of content and Zoom meetings with certain levels of Patreon once a month. It would be really great if you could support me through that or PayPal. So really appreciate it, folks. Thank you.